Bienvenido, YouTube. What's up? So I reckon it's time to say hello again. Wow. So much going on in the world, right? One plays with the idea of turning into a political channel and just being really political about everything, but that would be a surprise. In any event, try and keep it spiritual for as long as possible, I guess, and see what happens with that venture. Let me just get adjusted here. Yeah, so the original inspiration for coming on today was is this word glue keeps coming to me. Glue. And it doesn't actually refer to real glue, but it refers to I couldn't think of a really great way of wording it, so I ended up not using that phraseology, but it's like the glue of consciousness, something of that nature. And what it really refers to is like how, dude, what does it refer to? It's how like ideas or how thought structures can become attached, or how we, quote unquote, become attached to thought structures. I mean, how does that happen? And it happens like it's almost hilarious how it happens. There's like a sort of essential, or better to say elemental stickiness, or magnetism, which can be associated with thought structures, which one finds oneself attracted to. It's crazy, dude. So there's this, and it happens on a personal level. It happens on a social and international political level. It's crazy. And you wonder sometimes about especially at the international political level, about the actual ability, or not the ability, but the awareness that people have, of what they're actually working with elementally. Because what is it? It's so unbelievable. What is it that makes an idea attractive to you? What is it? What makes ideas attractive? Now, the easy answer to that is to say it's Shakti, right? Shakti is beautiful. Infinite, literally infinite permutations of beauty, and not just beauty, but also of the horrible things too. It's like what's the word? It's not panoply. It's a disengorgement of divinity in all of its forms. It's kind of like chapter 11 in the Bhagavad Gita, where Krishna displays the divine forms at Arjuna's request. Arjuna says, can you show me what the divine forms are? And Krishna, and then there's a whole chapter explaining exactly what he reveals. And it's everything. It's everything from the divine to the demonic, everything. Right? And so what is it in the infinite? What's gamut? Gamut's not the right word. Panoply's not the right word. In the infinite array of the manifestation of divinity in the earthly sphere, what is it that this is great being able to talk like this again. What is it that attracts? What is it that attracts you? What is it that attracts you to that, right? I'm putting you in quotes because the whole thing is so ridiculous, right? It's so ridiculous. Like this whole idea that there's a you, right? Man. It's like, but sorry, I keep laughing. The you, the personality structure is in a is in a way structured by the, or is actually defined by the sort of connection point between awareness and this field, the divine field of good and evil. So like the point, I think what happens is like, and I'm just like extrapolating, or I'm not really guessing, but I'm trying to describe something which is impossible to put into words, I guess. So, but like when awareness touches, it's like almost like there's a collision point between awareness and the disengage. What am I? The disengagement of divinity sounds a little bit too phantasmagorical, because it could be like that, but it's not always like that. But the point is that when you, let's just talk about the Shiva awareness and the Shakti, that when they touch, there's like a collision point. And you know, like any collision, like if you drop something onto the ground, you know, there'll be a little puff of dust, and there'll be some radial activity, like there'll be some pressure, right? There might be like air pressure, there'd be a sound wave, there'd be an air wave, there might be a visual field of dust. So you get these various different sort of fields of information coming from that collision. And the same thing happens when awareness touches yeah. I guess I shouldn't feel bad about having difficulty putting this into words about the manifestation of Shakti as reality, right? So that even if the touch is slight, there are tertiary fields and waves that come off of that. And oh wow. And as those fields, those sort of tertiary fields emerge, they form embodiments of identity. I think what happens actually is like awareness, it's also abstract. How can you even explain this to somebody? I'm going to sound like one of these loser non-dual people here, but you know, like awareness is the I. Awareness is the I, right? Awareness is the I, right? And so when 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 there are tertiary effects which occur, I guess you could think of, occur, that I is embodied everywhere. I think it's kind of like those like Alex Gray paintings you see. You ever see those Alex Gray paintings and there's like thousands of eyes everywhere, right? And the sense is that the eye is looking out, right? There's an eye looking out, but this kind of the eye has a double meaning. In the Alex Gray painting, it appears that the eye is looking outwards, which it is, but it's also the I, like the letter I, which is the identity. It's like the root identity of creation, right? And when you have these like touch points, collision points, which don't just happen. These are happening. These tertiary points are happening at all moments of time, right? Specifically time. Like at all moments of time, that is being created. And part of the reason for that is because time is one of those tertiary effects, right? The tertiary effect of those of the embrace, let's call it. Let's call it the embrace, right? It's more romantic. The embrace of Shakti and Shiva, right? Is sort of more tantric way to think about it. But like, that is from whence time emerges, right? And it also points to one of the other tertiary effects, because like in the context of like a romance, like of the touching, right? So it's not just physical effects, right? It's not just the physical effects of sound and visual field. There are other, look, I'm using my hands here. There's other fields of awareness which are affected by that embrace, right? And therein, this, what some people call the false I, the false personality, is created. But it's not really a false personality. It's really just it's miasma is the wrong word. It's a coalescence. It's almost like it's almost analogical to like the creation of the, well, it's analogical to the creation of the universe. Whatever. It is the creation of the universe. What we think of as the creation of the universe is analogical to this, right? So it's like when you get this, it's almost like you get a solar system of these tertiary effects. Holy shit, that's what it is. It's a soul, right? You get a solar system of consciousness. The astrologers love this, right? You get the solar system of consciousness, which emerges from the embrace of Shakti and Shiva. Give me some yerba mate. Where am I going with this? Oh, I was talking about the glue of consciousness, right? And what is the attraction? What is the attraction? Why do Shiva and Shakti embrace at every moment in time, right? I think it's kind of like what happens is that at every moment in time, once the engagement has happened, right, then there's almost like awareness. If we can imagine, if we can imagine for a moment, there's a bubble of Shakti. I'm just trying to think how this works, and it gets pierced. It gets pierced by a tendril of Shiva. What happens is now there's almost like a surface tension beneath this bubble, and the awareness, if we can imagine that there's like almost like being underwater, there's like a tendency to float to the surface, like the Shiva element is sort of pushing against the surface. So by default, by the very dynamics of reality, there is a continual compression, right? Which is interesting. There's a compression which dynamically and by its nature self-actuates, right? And here we have created this false, quote unquote, identity. which believes itself to be the real I and begins a process of discovery of who am I? Who am I? Right? This is, and so it's so funny because like most problems in our world, in fact, I would say all problems are in our world. All of them are problems of identity, right? Doesn't matter what the problem is, right? It doesn't matter if it's in the Gaza Strip. It doesn't matter if it's in the trans movement. It doesn't matter what the hell it is. Everything is a problem of identity. And the funny thing is like the great sages have said, we shouldn't be trying to identify as anything, right? The whole point of life is learning how to not identify, right? So the entire canon of modern wisdom is about learning how to identify as who you are. It's a complete canard, right? Non-identification is the only sort of passage to truth. Anything else is just a continuation of a fundamental misperception of what's occurring, right? But why does it keep occurring? It keeps occurring because and I mean, in a way, it may sound silly or a bit highfalutin to speak this way, but because there's certain aspects to this. So for example, I'm about to say that the reason it happens is because Shakti is so beautiful, right? But that doesn't explain the modern world, you might think. But it actually does, but it's not observable from common awareness. I guess. I never saw it before. But the beauty of Shakti how can you explain this, extends into divine and evil dimensions, right? For example, if you've ever evoked divinity, and even if you've never evoked divinity, let's say you just go to your local church, like there's certain tropes and metaphors and imagery which we associate with divinity, right? Everything's glowing, they've all got wings on, right? We've got halos, we're wearing orange cloaks, whatever it is, right? We don't have any hair, we chant, all this kind of stuff, right? There are certain tropes. There's a sort of softness, there's a roundness, there's an illumination. By contrast, let's think about, well, I don't even want to think about it, but if we think about the demonic aspects, there are some real tropes. Now, there are tropes which manifest in the real world, you know. A great way of seeing some of those tropes is if you see any of like the heavy metal music, like like I love the death metal and stuff, they often are using styles of curvature which emerge from the demonic realms. They don't realize that, of course. And of course, that's what's happening with the divine people too. They're using styles of, you see, the thing, it's not just the imagery. We tend to think of the emergence of these things as images which are anthropomorphic, but the origin of these ideas is pre-anthropomorphic, it's pre-image. It goes down to like it goes down to like the angle level, like the expression and contrast of specific angles. Now, why would that be? I'm not really sure, but it seems to me like it may just come down to like simple things like compression, right? So if you've got like a right angle, Or for example, if you got a 180-degree angle, it's uncompressed, right? A 90-degree angle, it's a little more compressed. What's that? 45-degree angle, 5-degree angle. Now, 5-degree angle is just a number, right? It's just 5 degrees. But also, wow, I'm looking at the space here between my hands. Like, there's something about that. It kind of looks sort of like a horn, right? And I'm extrapolating a little bit here, but the idea is that the compression is the compression, not of space, but of consciousness, right? So when we tend to think of angles, we're thinking of the compression of space and the fundament, like objects in this world. But that actually happens with consciousness too, right? And the structure, the structures, it's funny though. I'm talking about angles, right? I'm talking about angles and stuff like this, right? And the funny thing is when you study geometry, what you always talk about in geometry, identities, right? You talk about the identities of the geometry. That's just bizarre, mind blowing, right? And so those are mathematical identities, right? But the mathematics is just it's an attempt to explain like a conscious structure, right? Or in a way, it's like it's what some people would call a Platonic structure, right? Because these are pre-physical manifestations of form, or this is pre-form manifestations, right? So pre-form manifestations of forms, which are like maybe the compression of angles. And it's not even what we're actually talking about here is the compression of forces, right? The compression of forces. What forces, Scott? What forces would those be? Right? What forces might they be? Well, the forces would be the gunas or the elements, right? The elements. And those are distinct things. The gunas are like the elements emerge from the 3 gunas, right? And so there's but they have similar sort of vibes to them. I'm more familiar with the language of the elements, so I'll stick to that at the moment. But essentially, what happens is the elements are the tendency is to say that like the elements emerge from the gunas and the gunas emerge from pure consciousness. But when you say that, there's this idea mentally that there's like a process of emergence, whereas this stuff is just here. So the process of emergence is really a process of the really a process of the human mind trying to understand it. The emergence isn't of the elements, it's of human understanding. Right. So it's not like the elements are reaching out through emergence to us. It's like human understanding is reaching out to them. And that's what the emergence is, right? It's like moving out towards these structures. And these structures have dynamics, right? They have dynamics. And those dynamics could be thought of not could be thought of, right? Fire. The element of fire, heat, power, the will, right? We're getting to the classic definition of the elements, right? Water, fluidity, surface tension, right? Earth, solidity. And so what we get is we get these elemental emergence, we'll call it, which actually are the underlying structure of consciousness itself. So that means when we're attracted to what we think of as ideas, right? I support Israel, I support Palestine, whatever, right? Any of these ideas, those really are we're attracted to elements. We're attracted to the elemental structures of consciousness, right? And their particular style of compression, right? Which sometimes filters down into artwork, or it filters down into politics, or it filters down into identities of romance, or it filters down into whatever it might be. But all of it represents the elements. There's zero awareness of this. I was never aware of any of this stuff, right? And it's really pretty esoteric, and sounds like it's out there in a bunch of BS, right? But I assure you, this is the truth. At least as I perceive it, it's the that is what's going on. But that doesn't really help us at all, does it? Right? It doesn't really help us knowing that. Or does it? The problem is that our predilections, our identities are presupposed by our, I don't want to say karma, because karma is like, that's what it is, but it's like, it doesn't really explain it. It's our yeah, I think that is reasonable, Teresa. You know, that it's a point. Teresa D is saying, do you think the expression is a point of emergence from a specific frequency, almost like a point in a map, if we had to assign a position? Yeah, I mean, that sounds, I'd have to think about that, but this sounds about right to me, right? There's, I think the thing is like, yeah, I think yeah, the thing is when we say a specific frequency tends to have like a connotation of like a frequency is like, that's a thing, right? That's like an endpoint. Whereas it's really more of a, it's almost more of a field. Like it's like you almost enter into, I think there's more to the frequency than just the frequency, maybe, right? So the expression is a point of emergency. It's a point of emergence from a frequency. Let me just try and think about that a bit. It's yeah, I mean, I get what you're saying. I think it's no, it's good. It's a good word. I think it's as good as anything I'm saying. You know, so yeah, the frequency. The frequency. It's actually a good word. The frequency of your, because it's kind of like what I was trying to say about. There's like a predilection for a certain type of content, right? So in life, like on your web browser, there's a history of contents which kind of corresponds with who you think you are, right? I've got hundreds of links here to spiritual stuff. I've got links to programming stuff, right? But in life too, there's attraction to specific ideas, and a lot of those ideas we might not be happy with, right? I was watching a really, really good series. Somebody recommended this to me. My friend Paul recommended this to me, and it's a series. I've posted it on the community tab. It's called the Bhavachakra series, and this series is it's eight videos of about 2 hours long. And like you, I was like, I don't know if I want to like commit to 16 hours of audio, you know, but it was really, really, really good. So the Bhavachakra is kind of like the wheel of samsara that you see in Buddhism, right? It's got the world of the gods and the worlds of the hungry ghosts and the worlds of the humans. And I think the idea, as he repeats many times, is it's actually the wheel of becoming. It's the wheel of becoming is what it's actually called. But that series is such an excellent series. And while it's about the Bhavachakra, the lecturer has really got a much more esoteric approach. So he sounds like he's very, very steeped / a student of Samuel Aun Weor, who is the Colombian enlightened master, who wrote a bunch of really interesting books, which I've read a few of them. And he also dips a bit into Christianity, but it's still very steeped in tantric Buddhist ideas. But that is such a great series, specifically with how it identifies, bringing this back to my original discussion here, with how it identifies the attraction of the individual to certain, in the path of life, the attraction to certain things. Now, oftentimes, you hear about people, they keep hooking up with somebody who's bad for them, right? And they have all this stuff. Why is it? Why do they keep doing this? And then there's lots of things which come into your mind. Now, in traditional religious circles, what people might try and do is just like, they might say, listen, just stop thinking about bad stuff and just think about Jesus, or just think about good things and try and devote your life to goodness. And, that's not a bad plan generally, right? But what Buddhism suggests is it's not just evil things which are the problem, right? It's the attachment. It's the attachment to all things which are the problem. So what Buddhism is suggesting is it's not that evil's evil and that good's better, right? That's kind of the trap, right? What it's saying is that Buddhism suggesting like, hey, you've gone inside. It suggests like, listen, Buddhism suggesting, hey, listen, there's been a touching of Shiva and Shakti. And as a result of that, you guys, there's been some tertiary effects which have formed a solar system of awareness, right? And the only way to get out of that isn't to like one or the other of these things, is to realize that both of them are part of the false identity, the good and the bad. And so part of the wheel of the Bhavachakra, the wheel of, some people call it the wheel of suffering, but it's the wheel of becoming. And so what this is it's actually what's amazing is in the Bhavachakra, there are worlds of the gods, right? They exist. They're hyper powerful, but they're also in the wheel of becoming, right? As the lecturer explained, he's like, the problem is when the gods achieve this power, why would they give that up, right? Because it's perfect. It feels perfect, but it's part of the Shakti simulation, if you want to put it in those frameworks, right? And all of it is, even that suffering, right? It's kind of like if you're playing a game and you get the cheat codes, like for 5 minutes, it's awesome, and it sucks. It just becomes really boring, right? Because you suddenly realize you can kill everybody. It's not fun anymore. You're like, this sucks. And that's what's happening with this wheel of becoming. Even the fun stuff is suffering, right? That's why when you actually achieve things, a lot of times it doesn't actually even feel that good. It might feel good for a while, but where reality actually happens is on the fulcrum of conscious awareness. It's on the here I'm visualizing the fulcrum of awareness between the desire, between reality as it is now, between the desire, and then focusing on the fulcrum. That's where, so Teresa, yeah, it's a lack of equilibrium, right? Don't focus on the weights, focus on the scale, right? Focus on the scale, you guys. But it's very difficult because these energies which come into us, which express themselves as emotions and thought structures, which are reinforced through family lineages and social lineages, which seem all so important to us, which we're willing to die for. And we're going to maintain the lineage of suffering for another 1,000 years. The whole thing is a farce, right? It doesn't matter if it's Israel or whoever it is. This is all, it's a conflagration, or I guess it's a confederacy. No, it's what is it? It's a conflagration. It's just all nonsense. It's all complete and utter nonsense. Now, in the Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna says something of this nature to Krishna, and he's about to go into battle, and he says, listen, he's like, I don't really want to kill all these people. I respect some of these people, but we're about to go into battle. I don't want to do this. And Krishna says, listen, he's like, even the gods, when they enter the world of action, and the world of action is this solar system of awareness, which emerges just by dynamically, but on the touch, on the kiss between Shiva and Shakti. Even the gods are forced into action. There's no choice. And the only way out of it, says Krishna, is, well, what Krishna says is he's like, you have to live the role. This is the role you've been given, and you have to live this. But with as you play out your role in this world, focus on the conscious awareness of the balance. So even, for example, the world's about to go crazy here in a couple of days. And what will happen is, if there's a war in the Middle East, then all the oil exports will stop instantly, and the United States will have a major economic crash, and it will go completely haywire. People will be hunting down people from their homes, and it will be insane. And so what Krishna's saying is, he's saying in those cases, you have to live out your role. It's funny because sometimes, I play the role of this deep meditator and stuff. And sometimes you think, hey, listen, if people come to the door, I'm just going to Om Mani Padme Hum my way out of that, dude. It's comforting to say that, you're not going to do that, dude. You're going to defend your family. And so I'm falling into it myself. It's comforting to say that, right? But you've got to just play this role, but the thing is you play the role, but you recognize it, and it's almost like you sacrifice that awareness to, I was going to say to God, but there's like a division, there's a division of the divine, right? And that division sometimes represented as the first logos, the second logos, the third. There's different representations of the logos, right? So I think the first logos, I'm maybe wrong about this, but generally speaking, it's something like this. The first logos is like the pure awareness, right? The second logos might be Shiva and Shakti, right? And then the third logos might be like the representations of divinity inside of Shakti. So that might be, depending on your orientation, Ganesha, blah, 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 all those different sub-divinities in there, right? So what Krishna is saying, because the Bhagavad Gita is presenting Krishna as the first logos, right? And so the idea is you use, and this isn't just in the case of extreme circumstances with bands of rogue travelers, right? This is what the Gita and what the Upanishads too are suggesting, is that you do this with every action. That every action becomes a sacramental, or becomes a sacrament, right? Because every action is an expression of divine, I'll say of first logos awareness. Yeah, exactly. Right. So you become you become aware, and it's not, I think, and it's funny because, I know that Rupert Spira has the non-dual teacher, Rupert Spira's a great metaphor about somebody playing King Lear, right? And so the way he explains non-duality is he's like, well, if you were an actor, you actually believe you're King Lear, and then suddenly you realize, wait a minute, I'm just an actor in a play, right? And there's a huge element to this is that, like, once you gain awareness of this, it becomes like really obvious, like, oh. But I think also, by the same token, I think getting into language of simulation or role playing, and even the Gita uses some of that language, right? But I think I think it diminishes the importance of what's happening. So I think the actual, I was talking to my friend Hilmar last night, and he was saying the thing is when divinity descends into the ego, you suddenly realize that there's been a false king on the throne, right? Which kind of ties into what, like, Spira was saying. There's been a false king on the throne, and but for me personally, I think we have to sort of see the whole experience, even the so-called falseness of it. There's yeah, I was going to say there's a beauty to that too. Now, great masters such as Sri Maharaj Nisargadatta and others, and even Muji, I mean, those guys are always saying, just drop the illusion completely. You can't go there. No, Tantra suggests, that we can, in the words of Guns N' Roses, we can use our illusion, right? You use the illusion. The illusion is the attractor force which pulls awareness back to itself when it's used properly, right? And to me, that's what Tantra is about, right? But some of the great non-dual teachers think that no, you have to destroy it completely and see it as lies. And that's certainly a lot of the Buddhist teaching, is that all attachments to thoughts are suffering, all of them, right? My personal journey is that becoming aware of the attraction of thoughts is actually the path to, it's kind of like if you were trapped in a solar system and you didn't have much energy, right? How would you get out of it? Well, one way might be to, like, use the gravitational force of different planets to increase your speed. So you'd move towards a planet, take advantage of the gravitational force, slingshot off it, and that might give you the escape velocity, right? And that's really what Tantra is. Tantra is really about, rather than saying no to all thoughts, Tantra really says, like, okay, here's the thought. What is the attractive force? What is it, right? And allow yourself to get pulled into the gravity, and then analyze, like, what is happening? What is that force? Why is it there? Right? Why are we attracted to certain news stories? Right? If you're going through, like, you're like, you go through like CNN, which I only go to CNN just to be annoyed, right? But that's, like, funny. All these things jump out, and you're like, yeah. And then you just watch this energy playing out, it's like, what is going on, right? All these energies. Why are we attracted or unattracted to various things? There's attraction and repulsion, right? None of them are true. And the cessation of suffering is from eliminating all of it. But it can be really hard to cease connection with it, right? Because it's so attractive, right? Like, I was talking to somebody the other day, this guy who I speak to quite a bit, and he was saying to me, he's like, I was explaining this to him, and he's like, well, he's like, it sounds good. He's like, but maybe when I'm older, I won't be so horny, right? I'm like, well, that's true, right? Or you use that force now while it's still strong, as an attractor force to gain more understanding into what these powers actually are, you know. Now the truth is like a lot of this stuff, it doesn't seem real at first, you know. It doesn't seem real. It seems like it's abstract and conceptual and like whatever. But like at a certain stage, like I literally see this all the time. Like I'm like, it's just everywhere, right? Everything. And that's why I find myself laughing all the time. My kids are looking at me like, why are you laughing? I'm like, yeah, you don't want to know, right? I've explained it before. And it's just I'll be driving along and consciousness exposes itself. It's like, oh, I don't believe this, right? Or even what happens is you notice something and then you see the thread of like anger or lust or whatever coming in, and you're like, yeah, there it is. It's this dynamic. The constant dynamic. Still, having said that, you know, there's no guarantee that we will escape unscathed from this life. So, you know, I think the whole idea of devoting yourself to God is still a great idea. And even if you can't do that, just try reading divine literature, whatever it is, you know, educating yourself on various aspects, to get a greater understanding of these things. Because the thing is that it all seems so uncertain until it isn't, right? Until it isn't uncertain. There are incredibly attractive forces in this world, but a lot of those things are what's the word for that? They're like the tip of the iceberg, and below the water are demonic forces, which they're complete worlds. And it's funny, you know. I've been doing like a little bit of astral projection stuff lately, and like I did an astral projection course last year, which I didn't like at the time, but I didn't like the course, but probably just because it was so expensive, but also because I didn't think it was really well put together. But I did have like some success. Now, through meditation, I usually go into the astral plane for meditation, but formal astral projection was something I wasn't really great at. I agree with that, Teresa. Yeah. What happens is we attach to a specific field of awareness, and that our focus on that field makes us blind to the underlying realities. So it might be, oh, I love this person. I love them. I love it. And you get, and that loop, there's an energy loop of this love, of this, right? Which we don't see as attachment. They may see as attachment, right? And that also emerges from some other structure. Some of those structures which are below the surface are stunning. Yeah, anyway, so as I'm doing this, I've been doing a lot of astral projection stuff lately, and I just recently got into those into the Robert Monroe hemisync stuff, which I remember listening to those things like years ago and like being like whatever, but now that I can actually astral project, it's like it's weird. They're really powerful. The Robert Monroe hemisync things, very, 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 very powerful entrainment for astral projection. Very worthwhile listen. But the other night I was doing it, listening to some Robert Monroe stuff, and I dropped down underwater. Demonic world emerges. And it emerges. It's funny because I see it emerging, and the way it almost emerges almost like linguistically. So it's almost like I can see the curvature of letters. And there's something about curvature. There's certain curvatures which hearken the demonic world. And it's most commonly seen in heavy metal artwork. you see the curvature and it's almost like there's sort of I don't want to say horn structures because it seems like, okay, it's demonic, but it's not. The horns of the demons are formed from the same underlying energetic structure, right? It's a sort of a recapitulating self-referential recursive energy structure, which tends to spiral out, right, into and that emerges as various. That's the one, right? That's it. The curve interrupted by jagged edges. Or just curvature itself. The curvature itself is a precursor to that. And then, I mean, it's almost comical. I mean, it's almost obvious that's what it would be, right? Right? The sine wave is the natural beat of the human heart, right? And then if you start adding some like noise to it, that's a heart attack. That's the end of life, right? So it manifests in thousands of ways. And it manifests visually and musical and everything else, right? So that emerged the other night as I'm doing this. And, what might happen for some people is you'd see that and you'd be like, oh, fuck. And that the fear would pull you into it, right? Whereas these days it doesn't even bother me that much, I just like focus on, I'll focus on, like that night, I focused on the Om Mani Padme Hum mantra, which is really good, It's, and it's like literally 30 seconds. It's almost like, it's not even focusing on the mantra, it's focusing on the curvature. It's focusing on the curvature of the sounds. And and by doing that, it's almost like a contrasting. The contrast opens up the angles of consciousness, right? The angles are decompressed by the awareness, I guess. Anyway, hey, listen, I think I've actually got a big list of stuff I wanted to talk about here, but I've actually got a meeting coming up here, which I'd forgotten about. And I think I'll just stop talking for now. I think it was a pretty good chat generally. Thanks for showing up, Teresa. Great input there. Yeah. Let me just quickly preview this. The True Life Stories. Yeah, I think I'm done. Anyway, you guys, peace out. Much love. I'll be back at some point. I'm working my ass off lately. I got so much work. I've literally been 3 months cranking on a bunch of AI projects, right? AI, man. All the AI companies want fancy graphics and they're sending the work to me. So that's cool. Long may it continue. So that's why I haven't been on much. But yeah, life goes on. Peace.